Hey guys, Tbull here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the aircraft carriers. Now, when we rank the cruisers, battleships, destroyers, we just looked at the Tier 7 tech tree of each nation. But of course, there's only four carrier Tier 7 tech trees right now. This is going into 2021 in January. If you're watching this in the future, this is when these rankings are being determined. But since there's only four, I figured, well, let's just evaluate the whole line and kind of view the each nation's carrier fleet as a whole, and I'll tell you my opinions. Of course, that's one of the main things we need to point out. These are my opinions. Of course, there's plenty of room for debate on these, and that's what we kind of like to look forward to in the comments. You guys let me know if I got all the picks right, if I got them all wrong, where you think I was led astray, and that feedback will help other people trying to decide which carrier line they want to go to. They'll say, okay, well, the guy that made the video's got this opinion, but look at all these guys in the comments. They all seem to think this way. So just let us know what you guys think there. That'll help everyone out. And yeah, jumping right into it. One more caveat. I'm not like a huge carrier fan. I've played them all plenty now by this point in time. I've considered myself a good carrier player. Not a great carrier player, but I get the role. My approach to carriers usually is trying to focus the destroyers first and then move on to kind of a game management role. That's my approach usually, so you can keep that in mind as well when I'm giving you my rankings. So the hardest decision on these rankings for me would be which should we rank fourth and which should we rank third. I think the top two are pretty evident, and I think the top line is just a little bit better than the second one. But between number 4 and number 3, I'd probably wind up going with the UK carrier line as the bottom rated one. Now, why that is, they deal a pitiful amount of damage. Okay, the British carrier line, what's unique about them is they have your standard torpedo dive bombers, or torpedo bombers, but then they have kind of a high density bombing, the HE bombs, rather than there just being 2 or 3 bombs dropped. There's kind of a shower of them, okay? But they don't hit very hard, and the fire chance is significantly reduced. Compare like the fire starting chance on the Tier 7 Implacable, 33% chance compared to, let's say, the Lexington Tier 7 American, 58% chance. But more bombs and easier to hit, okay? And that's actually why what I like the most about the British carrier line. Again, I like to kind of focus on getting rid of the enemy destroyers first. I think that's where the aircraft carrier's value really lies, is the ability to keep those spotted for the team to shoot. But since we got these wide area high explosive rounds from the Implacable, you can actually hit these destroyers with ease, okay? And a lot of times you might not do a lot of damage, but you can knock out their engine or whatever. And if you're doing a good job spotting them for your team, hopefully that'll make it easier for them to shoot those guys. So that's an interesting part. The torpedo is extremely slow, okay? And let's getting back to the Implacable, 39 knots. And all the other nations' torpedo speeds in the water in the 50s. Okay, so that's significantly slower. And there's usually less torpedoes launched, but it has a much narrower spread. So once you adjust your aim for the slow travel time, they're actually pretty accurate. Torpedoes. So I don't hate the British carrier line, and deciding which to put fourth was, like I say, kind of a difficult decision. But that's the nation that I wound up going with for the fourth slot. Number 3, the Japanese carriers. Okay, now I think when the carriers first launched, it was the Americans and the Japanese, and I thought they were pretty tight at that point in time. In fact, I think I liked the Shokaku Tier 7 better than the Lexington at the time, just because torpedoes are a little bit easier to use for new carrier players, which of course at that time I was. But the Shokaku did take a fairly significant nerf. I think they reduced the amount of squads that the torpedo bombers have, which reduced the damage output. And the Japanese carrier line is focused on the torpedoes. Okay, the HE bombers, really not that good. Okay, I don't think that they got decent speed on the HE side of things, but overall, just not that effective. But the torpedo planes, those are much more effective. But like I said, the total damage output was reduced, at least on the Tier 7. I think the Tier 5 and Tier 3 are still pretty decent. But overall, we're going to put these number 3. Now, I should note at this point in time, there's one premium carrier. It's a tier 5 Japanese carrier, Zuiho. And this one, it's fairly similar to the Ryujo, which is the Tech Tree tier 5. But it's like the planes are slower. They got a little bit more health, I think, is the balancing factor. And then the detection on the HE bombers is significantly reduced by about 70% or so. Other than that, I actually think I'd probably prefer to play the Ryujo over the Zuiho personally if I'm going to be playing a tier 5 Japanese carrier. So I didn't factor that one into the nation's rankings, but if you want to take that into account, there is the premium carrier available for the AIJN. So, like I say, those two were kind of the more difficult to decide between. I'd say, in my opinion, the U.S. carriers are a clear second place on this list. They tend to be fairly versatile, even though the specialty is the HE bombs, right? Now they got the regular HE bombers, unlike the Brits, who you could also say that's kind of their specialty, but these ones hit hard. They hit really hard. In fact, highest damage by far at tier 7. But the fire chance also pretty strong, 58% on the Lexington. That said, the Torps, they're still pretty decent overall. They hit pretty hard. They are the slowest. Well, the second slowest, leaving out the UKs, which are like really, really slow. But compared to the other 3 nations that we got first, they were the slowest torpedoes on that package. And again, the changing of the torpedo speed, you just have to get used to each carrier and then how far you want to aim. Of course, the faster the torps go, the less reaction time that the opponents have, and the easier it is to actually hit them. But they're still pretty usable torpedoes. Pretty decent HP pools on these bombers. I guess it's middle of the pack. But the main drawback for me in the United States line is the slow speed of the planes. Okay, they're very slow compared to the other nations. Makes getting around the map a little bit more ponderous and slow, but you know, you just got to focus on your positioning, make sure you're keeping your teammates between you and the enemy, but then getting as close as you possibly can, and that'll allow you to compensate for that. So overall, I'd say the nation as a whole is a good, well-rounded line, and in fact, I'd probably recommend the U.S. line first for beginning carrier players. I think they'd probably be the easiest one to pick up, either that or the Japanese. But in terms of just raw strength, I put them number 2, and I'd say the Lexington, especially at tier 7, very strong, capable of putting up huge damage numbers, but not quite as high as the Parseval, which we'll talk about next when we're talking about Germany. So American carrier line pretty strong overall, and like we alluded to, the Germans are my top pick for the top nation for aircraft carriers right now. Now, the Rhine, I don't think that's the tier 3. I went back and played all these ships a few times earlier, and I didn't find that one to be good at all. I guess I'll tell you what's unique about the Germans. First off, extremely fast planes. They tend to be the fastest at the tier, at a given tier by quite a bit. But then what separates them, you got your torpedo bombers like all the other nations, but then instead of a high explosive bomb, dive bomber, we have actually AP bombs, okay, and these are, if they penetrate and explode internally, then you can get some huge damage. You can get citadel shots with these, and they can be a pain to deal with, okay, so they deal very good damage against cruisers and battleships and even carriers. Bad damage against destroyers, okay, and like I said earlier, usually I want to focus on countering destroyers first, and when that is the role that I'm focusing on with the Germans, I usually stick with the torpedo bombers. You can always spot them with the AP bombers, and you can even drop them and hit them with the AP bombers, but the damage usually doesn't tend to be that high on those destroyers. So for me, hitting them with the torpedoes is the better way to do it. The torpedo is very fast in the water. Okay, they usually are the fastest at all 3 tiers. Looks like they are, and sometimes by quite a large margin. So easy to hit, shorter range usually, okay? So you got to get in a little bit closer, which is fine, but that kind of forces you to take a short shot, and then due to the fact that the torps are going so fast in the water, you're actually going to be hitting a lot of shots with these. Torpedo damage very low, though, compared to especially the IJN and the Americans, but once again, you're probably going to be landing more torpedoes, which will end up causing some good damage output from the torpedo side. But the AP bombs, that's where this line shines. Anyone who's played carrier or battleships, cruisers, and you get focused by the German carrier, you know what kind of a big pain in the rear that's going to be, and they're probably going to sink you. There's not much you can do about it. And while I'd say the Parseval itself is quite strong at Tier 7, that's the Tier 7 German carrier, I'd say the Tier 5, the Weser, actually compared to its peers, is probably the strongest carrier in the game. If we're evaluating, okay, compare each carrier compared to the rest of the ships at its tier, the other carriers, that one to me always stands out. Every time I play that one, I'm like, man, that thing hits hard. Or, once again, if it's kind of focusing me and I'm playing a regular ship, I'm like, oh man, got to deal with that thing because it's very, very, it hits like a truck basically. So look out for that one. But yeah, on the whole, I'm going to put the Germans on top, Americans second, Japanese third, and the Brits fourth. So you guys let me know if you agree with that or not. Let me know what you think your opinion would be for the carrier rankings. Interested to hear from you guys on that one. That'll do it for the video. Hopefully you guys did enjoy it, and if you did, please hit the thumbs up. New to the channel, consider subscribing. We got lots of World of Warships coming all the time for you. Questions, comments, leave below. Love to hear from you, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.